15 famous people who had shocking childhoods. Number 15. Nicki Minaj. Born in Trinidad as Onika Mirage in 1982, Nicki Minaj was raised by her grandparents. Her parents had moved to the United States in hopes of starting a better life. They did well enough that at 5 years old, Nicki was sent to be reunited with them. The family lived in Queens, New York, and it was there that her father became addicted to crack cocaine. Minaj recounts that her memories of this time are mostly centered around the feeling of fear, mostly as a result of her father's addiction. She says that he even deliberately set fire to and burned down their house at one point, causing her mother to come very close to losing her life. Number 14. Jim Carrey. Growing up in Newmarket, Ontario, Jim Carrey was the youngest of 4 children. The beginnings of his life were fine, a typical middle-class existence and upbringing. That changed, however, when his father lost his job. At just 12 years old, Carrey was faced with the fact that his family simply couldn't survive. Carrey recounts that it got so bad that their family was forced to live in a van for a time, and even the children had to work in order to keep the family afloat. Carrey himself worked an 8-hour shift in a factory after a full day of school, and says that the difficulty of life at the time made him want to bash someone's head in. Fortunately, Jim was able to find solace in the comedy routines he was developing even then. Number 13. Dylan McDermott. Being born to a drug-addled 15-year-old mother and a wannabe gangster, 17-year-old father can be a difficult start for just about anyone. This was exactly the case, though, for actor Dylan McDermott. Actually born Mark Anthony McDermott, the actor's childhood would only get rougher. On February 9, 1967, his mother Diane was killed. At first, and mostly due to more primitive investigative techniques at the time, Diane's death was ruled an accident. This was largely due to the testimony of John Sponza, McDermott's father, who said that Diane accidentally shot herself. Authorities later claimed that there was sufficient evidence to file murder charges against Sponza. He would never face justice for the possible crime, however, as he was found dead in the trunk of a car in 1972. Mark was adopted by his father's third wife, a playwright named Eve Ensler. McDermott legally changed his name to Dylan when Eve suffered a miscarriage, as Dylan was the name she intended for the unborn child. Number 12. 50 Cent. It's rarely a surprise to find that a gangster rapper had a rough childhood. However, learning the details can sometimes put things into perspective. 50 Cent, born Curtis Jackson III, was born when his mother Sabrina was just 15 years old. The city where Jackson was born, Queens, is notorious for its criminal underbelly. At a young age, Jackson was forced to experience that life firsthand, as his mother had become a prominent and feared drug dealer. She was murdered when he was just 8 years old. From there, Jackson went into the care of his grandparents and was already following in his mother's footsteps and selling crack cocaine at just 12 years old. By 19 years old, he already owned a gun and had spent a lot of time in jail. It was around this time that Jackson would be shot 9 times as the victim of a drive-by. The attack would set him on the path that eventually led to his fame as a rapper. Number 11. Woody Harrelson. Though most people who know details of Woody Harrelson's life know that he is a little out there, many don't know about the childhood which contributed to that. Harrelson's father was also a pretty famous person in America, but for much different reasons. Woody says that his father, Charles Harrelson, vanished from the family's life in early 1968, and it was only in 1981 when national headlines were made by Charles Harrelson that Woody regained knowledge of him. Woody's father had been arrested for the murder of federal judge John Wood, the first killing of a federal judge in the 20th century. It shortly came to light that Charles Harrelson was actually a member of organized crime. It was more specifically a hitman who had been involved in the murders of at least 3 people. Number 10. Eminem. Though many celebrities have had difficult upbringings, few can be said to be successful as a direct result of that time. Eminem's childhood has become the stuff of legend for this reason, however. Many call him the greatest rapper of all time, and almost all of his mindset and much of his material comes from the difficult life he had growing up in Detroit. His mother, who would become a frequent subject of his rant raps, was a prescription drug addict and is also suspected of having been suffering from Munchausen syndrome. He also was the frequent victim of school bullies, who picked on him and beat him up routinely for any reason they could think of. It was at just 14 years old that he began writing lyrics and rapping as a means of escape from his difficult home life. Number 9. Drew Barrymore. Although she is known for depicting carefree romantic comedy starlets, Drew Barrymore actually had a pretty rough start. At just just 9 years old, she'd already began smoking cigarettes, and by age 11, she picked up a drinking habit. A couple years later, at 13, Barrymore began using cocaine. As a result of these early addictions, Barrymore attended rehab several times as a teenager and was recorded as having attempted suicide at least one time while undergoing treatment for her addictions. Much of this comes as a result of the harsh realities many young actors are forced to face before they're ready. But luckily, Drew was able to pull out of the tailspin before it was too late. Number 8. Shia LaBeouf. Although LaBeouf has become known as of late for his strange behavior, many people don't have his full story by which to contextualize his recent outburst. It turns out that once you know the facts though, his sporadic and strange behavior makes a bit more sense. LaBeouf grew up an only child, and his father was abusive from a young age. Much of this is due to the man being severely addicted to heroin, as well as suffering from PTSD after being a veteran of the Vietnam War. LaBeouf actually credits his forays into acting with his hostile upbringing, since he had no choice but to take on child acting roles to help provide for his family. As an adult, LaBeouf has described his father as tough as nails, different breed of man, and has even recounted tales of visiting Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with his father when he was still just a boy. Number 7. Halle Berry. Many celebrities take up causes to devote time, energy, and money supporting. Few do so as a direct result of experiences with those causes though. Halle Berry is an outspoken advocate against domestic violence, prompting many to wonder if she herself was a victim of such abuse. Berry has revealed that her 15-year-plus campaign to bring awareness to domestic violence is the result of her father beating her mother on an almost daily basis during the star's childhood. For as long as she is able to remember, Berry says that she frequently witnessed scenes of violence between her father and mother, including seeing her mother being kicked down the stairs when Berry was just 5 years old. Halle Berry now works to not only bring awareness to children who are currently experiencing the same thing, but also to end the violence before it has a chance to continue. Number 6. Tyler Perry. Now known for a litany of movies, some successful and others not so much, Tyler Perry wasn't always a happy person. As a child, he was the victim of many forms of abuse, the most prominent of which were physical and sexual. His father was often physically abusive, flying into a rage for virtually any reason. Perry specifically recounts a time when his father severely whipped him with a vacuum cleaner cord, leaving huge blisters and welts all over his body. As if the physical abuse wasn't enough, Perry also fell victim to several adults who sexually abused him, including a neighbor, a male nurse, and a man whom he knew from church. Perry also says that he was molested by a friend's mother. Perry says that in order to escape from these experiences, he turned to creating imaginary scenes of joy in his mind. Number 5. Keanu Reeves. At just 3 years old, Keanu's parents parted ways when his father abandoned the family and then completely dropped off the map when Keanu was 6. His mother then went through several failed marriages and rough divorces, which took a toll on Reeves' young perception of love and relationships. During this time, he had a very difficult time in school, since he suffered from dyslexia, which wasn't diagnosed in him for a long time. This challenged his ability to progress in his studies, and the actor became frustrated and contemplated dropping out. He did find solace playing sports, and a love for ice hockey led to him even having ambitions to play on a national level. Unfortunately, an injury permanently put those dreams to rest. The result was Keanu putting more time into his other passion: acting. Number 4. Christina Aguilera. The daughter of an army sergeant, Christina Aguilera has divulged that her childhood was a living hell, in her words. Her father was an abusive, angry person, and Aguilera says that she witnessed many extremely unpleasant things during her childhood, in which she never felt safe. One particular event which stands out to Aguilera's mother was finding her daughter Christina, then just 4 years old, with blood pouring down her face. When she asked what happened, the little girl responded, "Daddy wanted to take a nap and I was making too much noise." Aguilera has since said that she turned to singing as an outlet for these types of harsh events. Number 3. Oprah. Originally raised by her grandmother due to her parents splitting up shortly after she was born, Oprah Winfrey was forced to switch caregivers yet again at just 6 years old when her grandmother fell extremely ill. She moved back in with her mother in Milwaukee, and the pair moved around at least 3 more times before finally settling down when Oprah was 9 years old. It was during this time that the sexual abuse which Oprah has since spoken about began. She says that she was molested and raped by her cousin, uncle, and also a family friend from the ages of 9 to 13. She became pregnant at just 14 years old after turning to drugs and alcohol as a means of escape from her abusive past, though her son died in infancy. Winfrey has since stated that she'd chosen not to become a mother again because of her poor upbringing. Number 2. Charlize Theron. It takes a lot to overcome an abusive childhood. Charlize Theron is a great example of how it can be done, though. The actress was born in 1975 and grew up in South Africa, and much of her childhood was marked by abuse. Her father, Charles, was a known alcoholic and visited regular bouts of abuse upon Charlize's mother, Gerda. The pinnacle of this abuse came on June 21, 1991, when Charlize's father and his brother returned to the family's home in a drunken rage and began shooting at things, pounding on Charlize's door and yelling threats. In an act of self-defense, Gerda shot both Charles and his brother, killing Charles and wounding his brother. Charlize and her mother are incredibly close to this day, and Charlize credits Gerda with her strength and drive to succeed. Number 1. Mark Wahlberg. It's hard to imagine the fairly happy-go-lucky actor Mark Wahlberg as a troubled youth, but people old enough to remember his rise to fame would disagree. Before becoming famous, and at just 13 years old, Mark was already addicted to a litany of substances, including cocaine and alcohol, among others. At 15, he was the subject of an investigation into 2 separate instances of harassment against black students. The charges of racism were all but confirmed, however, when Wahlberg attacked and beat an older Vietnamese man in the street with a large wooden stick when Wahlberg was just 16 years old. When he was arrested for the incident, it was believed that he left the man blind in one eye. It was while serving time for this incident that Wahlberg decided to turn his life around before it was too late.
Subscribe for more videos.